Hong Kong, 1935. A young scientist is walking through a medicine shop, past jars of roots, dried insects, and powdered bone. And then he stops. Because sitting in a bowl, labeled as a dragon's tooth, is a molar, a single tooth, but it is enormous, far too big for any animal it should belong to. He buys it, he measures it, and he realizes he is holding the tooth of an ape with teeth twice the size of a gorilla's. Nothing that large has a name yet, so he gives it one. Gigantopithecus, the giant ape. Here's the strange part. Almost 100 years later, we have found thousands more of these teeth. We have found jawbones, and we have never, not one. To understand what that tooth means, you have to picture the animal around it. Gigantopithecus stood as tall as 10 feet. It may have weighed over half a ton. That is not a big gorilla. A large gorilla is a fifth of that weight. This was something else entirely. A primate the size of a polar bear, walking through the forests of Asia. For nearly 2 million years it was there. It watched the seasons turn. It watched other creatures come and go. It was, by size alone, the most imposing ape the planet has ever produced. And yet if you passed its bones in a museum, you would walk right by, because there are almost none to pass. Which raises the obvious question. For an animal that enormous, where did it all go? The answer is not that we haven't looked. It is that almost nothing survived. When an animal dies, the soft parts vanish first. Then, over thousands of years, even bone dissolves, especially in the warm, wet forests where this ape lived. Acidic soil eats calcium. What lasts, what really lasts, is the hardest tissue the body makes, tooth enamel. So that is what we have. Thousands of teeth, a handful of lower jaws, and nothing else. No skull, no spine, no arm, no leg, no hand. Everything we say about how it stood, how it moved, how it lived, is reconstructed from the parts that refuse to rot. We are reading a giant from its teeth. And teeth, it turns out, still have a great deal. So what did it actually look like? And here is where an honest documentary has to slow down and admit something. We don't fully know. Every picture you have ever seen of Gigantopithecus, the towering silhouette, the massive shoulders, the ape face, is a best guess. Some scientists picture it like a giant orangutan, its closest living relative. Others give it a heavier, more upright build. The truth is that without a skeleton, the pose, the posture, even whether it walked on 2 legs or 4, is argued over to this day. So, before I show you the version most people settle on, let me ask you something. Close your eyes for a second. From everything you've heard so far, a half-ton ape, teeth like a bear, a forest giant. What do you picture? Hold that image. The clue was hiding in the teeth all along. When scientists looked at the surface of those molars under a microscope, they found tiny scratches and pits, the fingerprints left by a lifetime of chewing, and they found microscopic fragments of plant silica trapped in the enamel. The verdict was clear. This giant was not a hunter. It ate plants, tough, fibrous, low-quality plants, and most likely, in huge quantity, one plant in particular. Bamboo, a half-ton body running almost entirely on bamboo. If that sounds familiar, it should. It is exactly the strategy of the giant panda. And the giant panda today survives on a knife's edge, because when the bamboo fails, there is no backup. Around 100,000 years ago, the world this giant depended on began to change. The climate shifted. Forests that had stood for ages started to thin and break apart, replaced in places by open grassland. For most animals, that is an inconvenience. For a half-ton body that needs enormous amounts of a single kind of plant, it is a death sentence. A smaller animal can adapt, move, switch foods. A giant cannot. Its own size, the very thing that made it so formidable, became the trap. Too big to hide, too big to travel far and fast, too big to survive on less. So it thinned out, generation by generation, in the shrinking pockets of forest. Until one day, in a place we will never pinpoint, the very last. Now here is the detail that makes it all feel closer. Gigantopithecus, did not live in some unimaginable, separate age. It shared the planet with our own ancestors. For a long stretch of time, an early human relative, Homo erectus, walked the same continent, same forests, same rivers, which means it is entirely possible that a human ancestor, standing at the edge of the trees, once looked up and saw it, a creature twice their height, watching them back through the leaves. We have no cave painting of it, no carving, no story passed down that we can point to and say, "There, that is the giant." If our ancestors remembered it, that memory is gone. Or, and this is where it gets interesting, because there is one scientist who looked at Gigantopithecus, looked at the legends, and refused to dismiss the connection. Grover Krantz spent years arguing seriously and publicly that the stories of Bigfoot and the Yeti might be a memory, a surviving trace of a giant ape that once walked Asia and, in his view, might have crossed into North America and never fully died out. Most scientists think he was wrong, and to be fair to them, the case against is strong. Gigantopithecus, as far as the fossils show, lived in Asia and died out around 100,000 years ago. There is no bone, no track, no body to suggest it ever reached America or ever survived. But here is why that is Gigantopithecus, the largest ape that ever lived, and one of the emptiest spaces in the fossil record. A creature we are almost entirely guessing at, built from the parts that wouldn't dissolve. It really was there, 10 feet tall, half a ton, moving through the bamboo for 2 million years. And it left us almost nothing but its teeth, and a question we can't fully close. If you want more forgotten giants like this one, subscribe. There is a new one every few days. And the next one is stranger, an animal bigger than any elephant that ever lived, that almost no one has heard of. But before that, I want your answer. Knowing what you know now, that we built an entire giant out of teeth.